Daryl Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series. It shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
Hi, Nye. I know it's been a while since we last talked. I've been busy. Yeah, that sounded way worse out loud than in my head. I know it's a bad excuse, and I've made too many excuses not to call, but it's not like you're in any state. Anyway, I guess I have to start from the beginning. Last week, I guess that's the beginning. I didn't call then, 'cause I really didn't think it'd go anywhere, but after what happened, there's no denying that you need to know what's going on.
Filipino immigrant Mari Datuan, thanks to her Babaylan family background, finds herself wrapped up in the supernatural happenings in Toronto. With two detectives, her neighbor, and a con artist with magic of his own, Mari searches for dangerous foci hidden in the city and looks into the history of the elders who made them. So, here is a little bit of a background. Is I had recorded this episode prior to the current recording that you guys are listening to now, and I had thought about my recording and I realized my previous recording was too normal. I was being so normal in that recording that I didn't talk about the podcast as much as I would have liked to. So this is technically a re-recording. Also, I am not going to promise that I won't be normal again. I will be very normal in this. And also, I want to preface because these videos are usually loosely scripted. They're I got bullet points. And so, if I am very normal in this podcast episode, recommendation episode, you would know why. That is because this Hi Nye has been gripping my head for the last month, and it still has not let go, even though I have at this point completely caught up with the show. And I want to talk about the podcast before I go on to this whole thing, because it has been a lot. I don't think I've latched onto a podcast like this probably since the Magnus Archives, which is very weird to think about. So let's begin, other than going into my dissent about how normal I am about the show. But so Hi Nye is very good. I think it's very good. I adore this show so much. I had a little trouble getting into it first, and I don't know if, because I was in a weird headspace when I started the show, and I don't know if I just wasn't when I started it, I wasn't in the space to listen to a new fictional podcast, or if I was I was just I don't know. It was just something about when I was beginning of the show, but the first act, because technically Hi Nye is only in its first season, even though the show's been running for years. This is the first act, which is the first 10 episodes. They're currently on Act 3, but in the first 10 episodes, which is Act 1, I just was not super into it. I didn't dislike it. I don't know. There was something about it. I'm wondering, I have to get the show a whole re-listen to know if it was just me and the headspace I was in when I first was listening to Act 1, or if it's what I call my fond little description, which is called Baby's First Podcast Issues. And I don't know if this was Matsirapo's first podcast. If it is Baby's First Podcast Issues, if it's not, it could just be a me thing. But I don't know. There was just it has the first act of Hi Nye to me had how I felt when I first went into Wobegon, which is I was this isn't bad, this is good, this has something. I just am not it's just there's something in it that's that I'm just you know how when something's a hit or a miss with you whenever you watch a movie or a show, and you get into it and you want to like get into it and like you just not like really getting to that point. Like that's kind of how I felt with like Wobegon's first season, and then like, you know, naturally later I got really into Wobegon, and like that's how I felt with like this when I got into like the first act of it. I had that issue with the Magnus Archives. Like I re-listened when I first got into the Magnus Archives, I re-listened to like the first couple episodes multiple times just because I was not getting into it. So, like, that would have to be something that I would have to re-listen to the very first act, which I am gonna re-listen to this whole podcast at one point. I don't know, that was, like, I always bring that up because when I got people into Wobegon, they were telling me they didn't like the first season. I was like, no, get past the first season, and then they got more into it after the first season. So, and I bring up Wobegon a lot specifically for this, like, for Baby's First Podcast issues, just because, like, that's, like, the best comparison I could think of with that. But like the show gets so good. Like when it starts getting good, it gets so good. I like the characters a whole lot. Like it's even funny because they introduce a bunch of different characters, and like you think like, okay, so this is gonna be like, not to keep bringing up the Magnus Archives, but you think it's gonna be like a Magnus Archives situation where it's like, oh, they brought up I don't know, like some guy who has like a library where he like gets his evil wizard magic from these books of like people's death, and then they just bring them up a bunch. So like most of these characters, like with the exception of like some of like the small stories with like the DJ and the dark sections, like a lot of these characters come back a lot and like play some kind of like, even if it's just like a little significance, they play some kind of significance. And I think that's just like so fun with it. Like there isn't like a lot of character names you have to memorize per se, because I know that's like something that like some people who I talk about like podcast shows about are like, oh man, I just gotta memorize all these names. You don't really have to, because a lot of them will like be mentioned once in a while, and then like they'll be mentioned a ton when they're like relevant. Like when like okay, I could use I'm gonna talk about one of my favorite characters in this. So there's a character who is introduced in Act 2. I adore them. Their name is Drosselmeyer, and they are also called the Doctor or the Puppet Master, and they were a elder, which in this world, the elders are like a group of these like, most of them are like rich, like the best way for me to describe it is they're rich assholes who got magic by killing people and putting bits of their souls into objects, and these objects are foci. So like, and like there's a lot more to it to that, but that's like basically what like bad description of like what they do, but like one of them's name is Drosselmeyer, and they're one of my favorites, and they like talk so much about Drosselmeyer in all the like the parts of the show where like Drosselmeyer is like super relevant. And so you just like, so if you're like, oh man, I don't know, like they brought up this like Richard Henry guy. Richard Henry is gonna get brought up a lot when Richard Henry is relevant. Don't you worry about that. So you'll have to worry about like remembering Richard Henry so much, because you will know who Richard Henry is when they talk about Richard Henry. But so yeah, it's like it gets so good. The show gets so fucking good. I don't understand why I'm fixated so much on this show, but I am. And I'm just like, it's all so much fun. It's like, I love the main characters. I do have my one little nitpick though with the main cast. The main cast is awesome. There's Mari, who is our main character. She's a Filipino immigrant. She moved to Toronto some years before the story starts, and I think she does like motion design. I forgot exactly what her like career is, but she does like a remote job or a hybrid kind of job. But it's not like the most relevant thing. They just like bring it up a couple times. But then there's also her neighbor Laura, who is like a basic big beefy hot muscle lesbian. I love her, she's great. And then there's these two detective characters named Donner and Murphy, and then there is this other character named Ashkin, who he's great. He's like a reverse Reagan, in which he's like a con artist guru, but his magic is actually real, and he's very offended by it. It's awesome. He's great. But my beef, my one small little beef, and it's not much of an issue in like when it gets to Act 3, it is a very horrible issue with me, and it could be just a me thing. I could not, until like Act 3, tell the difference between Murphy and Donner's voices. They sound way too much alike for me. And this could just be a me problem. I am very fine with it just being a me problem. I do not have this issue anymore. listening to the show as long as I have, there's like, I don't know, there's like the character. I just couldn't for the life of me figure out the difference between these two characters' voices for a while, and it gets like really bad at one point in the show where I was so confused about something until I realized like, oh no, I just got the two characters mixed up. I'm just like, that's like, I don't know if that's a me thing or if that's like a something other thing, but I was like telling my friends, like, I am having so much trouble telling the difference between these two characters, and it's getting really bad. But they're great. I like them. They're both really good characters. Like, their voices are really nice. They're very fun. It's just like they just sounded too much alike for me to have trouble telling the difference between the two of them. But like, yeah, no. So it's kind of like lots of stuff happening in the show with like characters talking to each other and doing things, but it's also like a lot of like narration. So if you're somebody who likes horror podcasts but you don't like something like Malevolent where it's like, oh, Jim is walking down the street and then all of a sudden a monster comes out and then like viscerally in your ears he gets his legs ripped off and his like eyes like stabbed out. It's not really that kind of horror. Like a lot of like the more like disturbing horror bits are mostly like narrated, so it'll be like a character being like, yeah, no, so I went into this guy's basement and he had like a bunch of people being tortured in his basement in very gruesome ways that I am talking about, but you won't actually like, you know, hear somebody being brutally tortured in a basement. So if that's like the kind of horror you are okay with in your ears, then that is a majority of what Hainai has about with it. And so it's just so good. And one of the things that I think is like really cool with Hainai is that it includes a lot of stuff about Filipino folklore, and it also references Filipino history. I am not adverse to either, considering that I am a white American who has barely left the country like once. So like, but like it's also cool to me because like this is like stuff I don't know. And so like it's cool to learn a little bit about it, especially like in the episodes where they like have these like stuff where they'll like sit and like they'll talk about like the content and like some of the episodes and like things that like you can't talk more about in the like show itself because there's either like not a place for it, or it's like you can't have like Mari sit down and be like, okay, so let me give you a lesson about Filipino history from so and so time so you'll understand the context of the thing I'm talking about. It doesn't have that. So like I think it's just like cool to learn about. It's also a bit nice to have like references for things to look at, considering that like one of my main characters in my webcomic is Filipino. Now you guys knew that Nemesis is Filipino, now you know. So that's also nice for me. But I also do want to go ahead and say that there is like, because I like mentioned like Filipino history, there are references in here to like real life fascist regiments, and as well as like period typical racism and queerphobia, but like nothing explicit. So like I remembered like talking about like, you know, queerphobia and like racism and like Afflicted and being like, it's like talking about stuff that has happened or would have happened in the past, things like that. That's kind of like the general same thing here. Like, so if you're like, oh, you know, there's discussions about racism, it's not a character being racist on screen. You do not have to worry about that. So, and it also has like, one of the things with the show is that the relationships in the show are so messy. They are so messy. There are a lot of like queer romantic relationships in the show. This is a very queer horror podcast. Some of these relationships are very messy. So there's like, to be a little normal, there is, I mentioned them earlier, but there is a character named Drosselmeyer, and they had a partner, his name is Petya, and essentially, to more or less get into it, their romantic language is romantic surgery, and Petya has like basically zero self-esteem issues that don't stem from Drosselmeyer and their relationship with Drosselmeyer. Like, I mean, a part of it does, but I feel like the way the relationship is basically because Petya has very, very low self-esteem. Poor guy needs therapy, so does Drosselmeyer, but mostly Petya. And it's just that their relationship is so good. It's so fun. But it's like, my guy, please go talk to a therapist about your problems. You can't hinge your whole mental health on the approval of one person. Same with you, Drosselmeyer. Get some therapy, two of you, both of you. Go get couples therapy. I love them so much. But okay, I keep laughing through this, but like, here's the thing. This show grouped me in like the worst light possible, because like I could like, you know when you get into something and you can kind of feel yourself like slowly getting the claws into you, right? That moment happened with me when I was like beginning to Act 2 and they got into like the Drosselmeyer arc and like learning about the Doctor and like everything they did in this town called Hyde. And like they introduced the Doctor, and then I was like, oh, this is an interesting character. I'm really vibing with the story. And like, you know how you could kind of feel yourself getting into something, and it's kind of like the Jaws theme song, which is like I'm not saying it correctly because I've just realized that I don't know if that would be a copyright thing, but I was like in there and I could feel myself slowly getting more and more into this character, and I was like, oh no, I'm feeling the fixation coming upon me, but like I can't do anything to stop it. And then it gets to the fucking Petra love story episode, and it's just like a fucking BAM! And I was like, oh no, I'm invested, I'm so invested, oh god, oh no. And then I was like, getting into Act 3, and Act 3, the beginning of Act 3 is so fucking good, but getting into Act 3, and I was like, oh yeah, no, like, okay, so I got my blurbos for this show, I love these guys, they're great. Good thing nothing else is gonna happen to make it worse. So I need to talk about the main antagonist for the show. The elders. So Mari talks to a lot of different elders throughout the whole timeline of like Hyde, and all these characters keep talking about the main antagonist and the leader of the elders, and who is this guy called the Benefactor. And they're like, oh, the Benefactor, he's an evil scary wizard, does evil scary wizard things, ooh, spooky, woo. And so everybody's like being like, oh yeah, he put a spell on himself so nobody remembers his name, nobody remembers his face. And so like it's like, oh, it's gonna be like a really big thing, he's gonna be this like grandiose like evil wizard guy, oh, spooky evil wizard guy. And then you meet him and he is like well, okay, well, first you meet Richard Henry. Going back to Richard Henry, I fucking hate this guy. You go back to Richard Henry, and Richard Henry's just kind of like, the Benefactor's like a sad little puppy dog. He's like a little bitty baby. He's powerful, and he could do some like terrible shit if he needs to, but he's like a little baby. And it's just kind of like, see Richard Henry, and it's like, okay, so you were just mean to this guy. And then you meet the Benefactor, and you're like, oh no, he is a sad, wet cat. He's like a tired middle school teacher. Oh god. And I'm sorry, but I was just like, love at first sight. Like, the moment you meet a character and you're like, that's a Blorbo right there, come here. That was me with the Benefactor. Not the very first time he showed up, because he does show up for a brief moment once in like Act 3, but like in like the episode where we actually like sit down and like where Mari like sits down and actually like talks to the guy, does not happen that way. Their first like actual meeting was not like that at all. But yeah, I was like, oh no, this is a Blorbo right here. This can't be. Like, no, I can't have 3 Blorbos from this show. Oh, and then it gets worse, because there is not gonna say which set of stories it is, but there are sets of stories that may not be backstory episodes for the Benefactor leading up to like when he actually becomes the Benefactor. And I'm listening to it, and like we get like little tidbits of like extra information about the Benefactor through these, and I'm just like, oh no, he was written for me. Not like actually, no, but like he was written for me. This is like Matsunapu basically just sat down and was like, let me curate Daryl's most perfect character. And I'm like sitting here every episode, I'm like, oh no, stop, please, Matsu, I can't eat fast enough, stop feeding me all of this stuff. Cause I've been losing my mind about this one fucking character. And this has been my life for like the last month, guys. So yeah, that's if my descent into being the most normal person about podcasts has been proven through this section of the episode, I hope it has. You guys should go listen to Hi Nai and ask Mati Dapple why. and Mati Dapple, if you're listening to me, why? This show is just so good. I'm having so much fun with the show. I am gonna draw so much more fan art. I have stuff planned. I also am hoping to not go into a crazy descent of fan art because I also do have my own webcomic I need to focus on. But oh boy, every time I want to sit down, I'm like, I should go draw more Benefactor fan art. You got ideas in your head? And I'm like, yes I do, but I also gotta go draw other stuff. So yeah, no, please go listen to Hi Nai. It is very good. These characters are messy, they are so well written, they're so much fun, it's so good, and I am very excited. I want more people to get into the show with me, and like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, every time I think of it, I'm like, messaging my friends, and I'm like, the show has rotted my brain so much, and it's great. I love it a lot. As always with every show I do, I am going to link any relevant websites. There is Patreons. There is a website. I think they have a Kickstarter happening right now or soon. I don't know. If I can find it, I will link it. You know the drill. I don't typically, like whatever websites they have, I will link it. And you guys might see me drawing more fan art. I have like a couple of like pieces ideas that I want to do. And with those, I might go ahead and record a couple for like future videos. So if you like those art processes, or you can like follow me on my own social medias and see the finished pieces. I already did like one really cool piece for the Benefactor, and of course the like art for this video, which is art of Pecha and Drosselmeyer. So yay! Romantic surgery! Woo! We love it! Okay, so go listen to Hi Nai and have fun. Bye!